Hello everyone and welcome back to the next episode of the Road to FIDE Master series. I have to apologize to start with because I have ended the tournament more than a week ago. However, I had my health problems with my sore throat, so I was unable to record videos and recaps for you guys, but I am back. Hopefully you will forgive me that and we can jump straight into it. I've played in the Czech Republic Team Championship tournament in Pardubice. There is this big chess festival going on for around 2.5 weeks. I was only a week there, so maybe in the future years I will stay for longer. But this time, as I've said, I've played in the team championship that consisted of teams of 4 participants, and we have played 7 runs. Just to show you guys how big the festival is, I have prepared for you the team starting rank. As you can tell, the top teams are very good, and there were as many as 168 teams, so plenty of players. If you multiply it by 4 players per team, you will get close to 700 participants, and if you include the additional guys that were 5th or 6th on the starting list to be able to maneuver a little bit with the players playing each round, you will for sure have more than 700 players playing this tournament. So big tournament. And as of my team, we were listed on the place number 11. We have called ourselves Polski Cukr, so Polish sugar, and our rating average was also quite high, so we were hoping to play some good tournament. And as of a, let's say, specific players in specific teams, as you can tell, especially those few first numbers were amazing. I was playing on the second board, therefore I had the Grandmaster on my list, International Master, FIDE Master, but over 2400, so plenty of great guys against myself. Obviously, at the same time, we would be starting the tournament with some lower rated guys because we were rated so highly, but within like 1, 2, 3 rounds, I would get there anyway. So I was hopeful before the tournament to be able to play against very good guys. Did it happen like that? Let's see, and let's begin with the analysis of the round number 1, in which I got paired against lower rated player František Skokan from Czech Republic, obviously, and against whom I decided to open up with knight f3. He replied with d6, so I was initially wanting to play with knight f3 b3 setup, but as you can tell, as of now e5 might be incoming, blocking my bishop, so I decided, okay, let's switch things up a little bit and go back to e4. I was hoping to get some knight of Sicilian or any kind of d6 Sicilian, but my opponent replied with knight f6, hitting my pawn, knight c3, defending my pawn, and after c6 I knew that we would be playing perhaps something solid, something usual, and I wanted to get my opponent out of the comfort zone as soon as possible. And I'm guessing that you will not guess my next move, but since I wanted to spice things up, I went with straight away h4 pawn. Is it a good move objectively? No, practically no, but I just felt like it's a fun one to play, and I was curious how will my opponent react. I was kind of expecting the setup that d6, c6 comes along well with g6. So after g6, I have straight away some ideas of h5 and sacrifice. Maybe I'm not that crazy though, so perhaps I would play something more like bishop e2 and then only later on some h5 idea. Nevertheless, it did not happen because my opponent replied with very natural bishop g4, developing move, bishop is active, pinning my knight, taking care of those light squares. So all in all, very good move against my h4 move. After that one, I just chose, okay, let's just go for the center. So d4, knight b2 d7, bishop g5, developing the bishop, and I believe that opponent had some interesting ideas of queen b6, trying to put the pressure on b2, on d4, because as you may remember, this bishop pins my knight, so it's like my pawn on d4 is not that well protected. So queen b6 would be a nice try, e5 was also a nice one. My opponent went for queen a5, also I guess a playable move, but something I did not expect that much, to be honest. And at this point I had a choice, okay, how will I continue my development. Should I go for like queen d2 long castle? Should I go for bishop e2 short castle? Maybe something else. In the end, as you may guess, I went for the more aggressive setup. So I started with queen d2. First of all, obviously taking care of the pin that was there. Therefore, my pawn on e4 was kind of hanging. So queen d2 it is, with the hopes of being able to play a long castle if possible. My opponent though played b5, trying to hit my knight and then hit my pawn very early on. However, practically speaking, it was not the way to go. You may know the idea and the rule that whenever your opponent is playing on the side of the board, as I did, your idea should be to reply in the center. So the most natural way of developing for black would be to just simply play e5, trying to create some tension in the center, and then maybe bishop e7, if not g6, and then castle short and play something like that. Black pieces are developed quite nicely. This h4 move does not help me so much anyway, so this would be the way to go. If b5 is played, it's not like all of a sudden this move will be the best ever, but the point is that perhaps black should have focused on the center straight away. Nevertheless, b5 creates some problems for me because I am threatened with this pawn is hanging, so I have two choices. Either I will play bishop d3, solidifying the pawn and therefore allowing my knight to drop back anywhere I want, or I can go for some knight e2 idea. Yes, I'm leaving the pawn hanging, but also the queen is hanging, but after the exchange I would be taking with the knight, protecting the pawn. And this bishop is somewhat lost a little bit because, I can try to hit it with this pawn, this pawn, this pawn, and so on. So perhaps my opponent would have taken on e2. And the idea is that as of now, I have a little bit better center. I have the bishop pair, but do I really want to go into an endgame so early in the game? I don't think so. Therefore, my choice was to play bishop d3 in the end, and at this point my opponent, instead of going b4, which as of now does not make much sense because I can jump with the knight wherever, I was planning on going to d1 and then to e3. This is the pin, this is the possibility maybe, so the pawn itself did not accomplish much. My opponent now went with e5 move. The problem is that now e5 is not so powerful, because if e5 would have been played as of now, d5 makes little to no sense from my perspective, but with b5 included on the board, since b5 was played and c6 is weakened, now d5 from my perspective makes much more sense because I am undermining this pawn chain. I am willing to exchange a little bit because I'm hitting the b5 pawn, and it all comes down to the tactics you have to calculate in the end, because after d5, obviously if my opponent takes, I can for example take on f6 as an in-between move, so that if my opponent takes on f6 with the knight, I have bishop takes b5 with a check, very important stuff, and then this pawn might be lost, this king is opened, so this is the dynamic I wanted to achieve anyway in the game. So cd5 is out of question, and if so, b4 is on the menu, because b4 kicks away my knight, and then if I jump back, the pawn might be taken. But this is the whole story behind d5, that after d5 b4 I will not be holding back, I am taking on c3. If I am taken here, I am taking here with a check, very importantly, and if my opponent takes whichever way he wants, let's say with the knight, I can take on c3, takes, and I have one more pawn. Yes, it's a doubled one, so it's not the clear pawn advantage. However, I would be willing to go into such endgame because I felt like winning chances might be there. For example, my opponent can try to break my pawn chain even on the king side too, and maybe play something like this, but eventually I felt like I would be getting better and better position thanks to my bishop pair, thanks to the outpost on d5, thanks to the open b file, you name it. I was confident that I would be better in this position. Therefore, obviously after d5 b4 I took, but more critical variation is knight to c5, because knight is jumping away from the attack of my pawn, hitting the pawn, and the attack to c3 knight is maintained. So before I have played really bishop d3, so at this point I had to figure out, okay, after bishop d3, e5 is a logical continuation, so I need to figure out what happens if I play here, e5 is played, and then I play here, here, because if I lose the central pawn, and this pawn is not so great either, I might be worse. So it's really nothing in between. Either I have initiative, either I have attack, so that this continuation is explained in a sense, And if not, I cannot really play bishop d3, so my choice on the move number 8 would have to be different. Thankfully, I've calculated everything and I knew that I should be fine in here because I play knight d5. I'm not going back, I'm giving away this pawn because I have spotted pretty amazing checkmate pattern that you might have seen on the thumbnail, and if the thumbnail is why you clicked on this video, you will see shortly what's going on specifically. What's the point? The point is that knight on d5 creates a pressure here, creates some danger on c7 square, also puts some pressure onto the f6 knight, and on top of that, it's inviting my opponent to take on d5 with the temptation that after this move, yes, my pawn is solidified, but the e4 move is a possibility. From the distance, thankfully, I saw that yes, there is the fork, but this bishop is not protected, so I can jump away with the knight, attack the bishop so that if my bishop is taken, I will take his, and if he goes away with the bishop, I will go away with mine, and I have pawn advantage, and this is the beautiful one. So I'm not worried about that, and if so, the only thing I am worried about is knight e4 this way or that way. So there are a few differences in regards, okay, which knight should take on e4. I was worried more about knight c2 e4. Obviously, after both knights taking on e4, I can simply exchange on e4, but at this point I have an additional, let's say, possibility of taking on f6 with a check. Therefore, the knight is undermined, so knight has to take here. So then I have this choice: should I take on f6 or e4? Or if my opponent takes with knight on from f6, then I can simply take and get the very same position. So all in all, perhaps this position would be on the board anyway, but as I've said, after knight from c5 taking, I would have this additional possibility. Apparently, it's much better for me than the main line, but in the game I felt like this is not so great, so I would probably take on e4 anyway. But going to the point, bishop e4, knight e4 happens, so that I am hit there, I am hit there, also my knight is hit, so I need to react properly. And on top of that, there are some discovered attacks incoming, so I have to be precise, but I saw from the distance queen d3 is the way. And when I was playing either bishop d3 or d5, I had this position in mind, thinking to myself, okay, my opponent is forced to take on g5, and both options of knight g5, h5 were okay, I guess, in my mind, because if I take with h-pawn, all of a sudden this rook comes into play, and I might have, in some variations, the possibility of grabbing the h7 pawn. At the same time, I am doubling my pawns. At the same time, this knight is not the best, so I would be debating, okay, is it good or not? And with taking with the knight, actually I have knight takes h7 ideas, but you know, both of them are kind of risky because the piece on h7 is not so great. What are the pros of this decision? My pawn chain is still fine, and the knight has a very nice reroute to e4 square, so that I have control over all the light squares in the center. What are the drawbacks? I have not seen that many, so perhaps this would be the way to go. But you know, when you are calculating like 5-6 moves deep, I guess it's enough to know that both options would be okay, and then when I get there, you know, I can choose. On top of that, I spotted that after queen d3, indeed, this is the only option, because if my opponent will not play it, I have an amazing trick. What is the trick? I was expecting mostly knight c5, trying to jump away with the knight, hit the queen, threaten with this, maybe threaten with this, and kick away the bishop, plenty of choices. But I have a master strike in here, which is queen b5. I'm giving the queen away on b5 square so that I can deflect the queen from protecting the c7 square, and after my queen is accepted, I deliver the amazing checkmate that you saw in the thumbnail. Or did you? Because apparently my opponent did not choose knight c5 move, choose some other one, but still allowed me to do this trick. So as I've said, knight c5 was a tempting one, I guess, because you know, you are hitting the queen, you are jumping away with the knight and so on. This was the other option, I would say, but my opponent found the third move, which I really didn't expect, because it's simply bad. But if you make a longer thought process, let's say, about it, it kind of made sense, because he played bishop e6, so that if I take his knight, he can take mine and maybe then the pawn. And if I don't do it, well, what can I play? My knight is still hit, I don't have that many escape routes and so on, but I still have the same trick. I still have queen b5 with the very same idea. My opponent has nothing to play in here. And at this point, the players from the opposition team, so the colleagues of my opponent, like stood up and took off glasses, tried to clean them up and look at the position yet again, because this was such a powerful, unexpected, and a funny looking move, also very nice looking move. And my opponent just were in shock for a minute, then smiled for a minute, and in the end actually took the queen, allowing me to checkmate him, which was very nice of him because, well, if you are an experienced player, you may have seen such scenarios during the classical, especially games in chess, that one move before checkmate, opponent resign instead of allowing you to checkmate him. This time my opponent allowed the checkmate, so I'm thankful for him, because this is the very nice picture at the end of the game to see so many pieces, light pieces, and a pawn checkmating the king right in the center of the board without a queen on the board. So that was really nice. Obviously, any other move loses on the spot too, like knight g5 trying to get rid of this bishop. I take the queen and I have queen advantage, so the game will end shortly anyway. So this is the picture. Please remember it. It was a very nice one. I hope that you liked it. And for this video, it's all. I wanted to invite you to, the tournament. I showed you the starting list. I showed you the possibilities to meet good players. But this was a warm-up during the day number 1. Pretty amazing checkmate. I don't want to spoil it by any other game. So this is it. But starting from the next day, tomorrow I will be covering 2 rounds per video, because all the rounds were doubled, meaning I've played 2 rounds each day. So instead of dividing all the rounds into separate videos, I decided to record some videos on specific days. So this is day number 1, day 2, day 3, day 4 incoming. So if you are new around here, please make sure to subscribe so that you will not miss out on future videos. And if you are old around here, please remember to leave a like, because I hope that this checkmate deserves it. As of now, thank you all for watching this video. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.